The scamming industry is a billion-dollar industry, with scam centers run like enterprises, hidden in jungles, industrial parks, and economic zones, forcing thousands of trafficked people from all over the world into brutal shifts, under constant control and fear for their lives. In this podcast, we highlight the people behind the scam centers and their victims. I'm joined by Sharlene Chen, Deputy Director at Humanity Research Consultancy, an organization that combats modern slavery, human trafficking, and forced labor. Before we dive deeper into scam centers, can you explain first what a scam center is, and how does it compare with regular scamming?
So basically, the scam center is where all of the scam happen. So you could see many scam, for example, victims or scammers conducting scam within a company setup or an office setup. So any regular scamming that we see nowadays could come from one of these scam center or one of these scam companies.
I've read that scam centers in Southeast Asia can house anywhere from hundreds to thousands of people in a single compound. UN reports suggest there are at least 120,000 forced workers in scam operations in Myanmar and around 100,000 in Cambodia, spread across many large facilities. How come these scam centers have so many people?
It's probably weird to describe the industry as this way, but the scam industry is such a lucrative and large industry nowadays. We see hundreds of companies operating in Southeast Asian countries, including the hotspots such as Cambodia, Myanmar, the Philippines, Thailand, Laos, and many, many other locations where these scam companies are operating. And many transnational criminal organizations realize that scam is such a great business to conduct. It's so easy to gather a bunch of people within one location, one company, provide them with some scripts, computers, desktop, internet connections, and then there we go. Hundreds, yeah, millions comes into their bank account just by conducting scam. And this is really how this entire industry started to grow.
It almost sounds like you need a business degree to run a scam center. Who are these people and what drives them to do this specific type of crime?
So, a lot of these criminals are ethnically Chinese. However, they may not be Chinese nationalities. So, they could be Chinese, Hong Kongers, Taiwanese, or even Indonesian, Malaysian. But most of these transnational organized criminal organizations are led by Chinese speaking criminals. So, through the Belt and Road Initiative that's led by the Chinese government, tons of cash flow, people, business opportunities, investment flew into Southeast Asian countries in the past, let's say, 10 years. Since then, there are so many Chinese people doing both legitimate or legal businesses in Southeast Asian country. And these people, some of them after COVID or during COVID, they realized that either their investment in five-star hotels or resorts are not really profiting anymore. They need to drop the business. They need to just leave the country since if they continue operating during COVID, they're going to lose all of their money. And this is how all of these large buildings, these huge five-star hotels, resorts, or casinos were left empty. And this is when some transnational organized criminal groups took over these locations. They took over these locations, turned them into offices, dormitories, and transferred either scammers, criminals, or trafficking victims into these buildings and used these buildings or compounds as their scam company.
Some of these scam centers market themselves as legitimate businesses, with contracts, HR departments, and even office rules. But how do these organizations view trafficked workers?
So, for the people that they purchased for these scam activities, I believe that these criminals view their trafficking victims as assets because they actually purchased these people. So while other organizations were trafficking these people, or while the people or workers within these organizations are already purchasing, scamming, and recruiting people outside of the compound, these organizations have already begun generating the contract, onboarding process, allocating dormitories or offices space for these newly on board trafficking victims. So if they want to let the victims go, or if the victims wanted to leave, the victim's family will need to pay a ransom. Or if the victim themselves could pay them a specific amount of money just to recover the fee that this organization used to purchase this victim. So yes, they do view their trafficking victims as their company's assets rather than just regular employee.
Can you walk me through a typical day of a person in charge of a scam operation?
So, as a manager, scam boss, just like any large corporation, they're in charge of high level decision making in their company. So, on a daily basis, they may be in charge of, for example, deciding the direction of their operation. And what does that mean? That could mean the kind of scam they want to conduct in the next 2 weeks or in the next month, or the type of people or the language they would like to target in the next season. They may also be monitoring their scam targets. For example, they expect to earn at least, let's say, 3 million US dollars per month. And they need to make sure that the lower level managers, the team leaders are properly managing the victims or the scammers. They want to make sure that the different departments are operating well and are meeting the targets. And these targets could be how much money that they scam, how many people that they scam, or how many newly on board trafficking victims they're having. And apart from that, the scam bosses are also in charge of bribing the local authorities to make sure that their companies could be operating smoothly within these compounds or these locations, and make sure that through these briberies, they could get the support and protection from the local police. They get smooth and secured Wi Fi, internet services, electricity services, water services of the utilities to make sure that their operations could run smoothly. The higher level managers may be in charge of bringing the money to the local currency exchange offices to conduct money laundering, to get their money exchange, or use crypto to deal with all of the proceeding they got from their criminal activities.
When I hear this, Sharlene, I get the impression that in order to organize such an operation, you need to have experience with these type of organizations. Do they come from a background of organized crime?
A lot of them, they do have experience in organized crime. So, like any large corporation, you need human resource, you need accounting, financial departments, you need people who are good at managing, consulting, etc. So, yes, this is like running any of those companies. A lot of these criminals, they have good connections with both transnational organized criminals group or local criminal groups. They know where to conduct money laundering. They know if they would, let's say, if they want to recruit a group of Taiwanese victims,
Mhm.
they know who they should talk to in terms of recruiting these people, transferring these people from Taiwan into Southeast Asian countries. How do you deal with the logistics, airport transfer? How do you avoid custom checks to make sure that your illicit activities are not being caught and your victims could be successfully transported into these compound without being stopped by the police. So there are a lot of details that are involved in these activities, just like any kinds of normal businesses. And yes, they do have the resources, the experience, and you'll have to know the right people to be involved, successfully be involved in this kind of work.
I saw on the news a number of scam centers being raided by the police, and these raids seem a bit performative. You see buildings are being demolished, computers are being destroyed, and it all looks very tough. But when these scam centers are raided, what happens to the bosses? Do they get arrested or do they just relocate?
There are chances where the scam managers or bosses are having good relations with the local police. So some of them, they do get notice before the raid happen. So in Siem Novelle in Cambodia, we heard that the local residents, they shared that there were a few times where they saw in those huge scam compounds or offices hundreds of people with their luggages, with their pets, with their beds, blankets, whatever personal belongings, leaving the compound by taxi, by foot. And after 24, 48 hours, there's a police raid happening. So it's pretty clear that someone gave them or gave them the warning about the police raid. So, in some cases, scam bosses are being arrested. For example, just a few days ago, China just executed 11 scam bosses or 11 criminals that are involved in large scale scam operations. But a lot of the scam bosses are also still around the area. They got the warning, they relocate their business to another country or another state, or they close down their business for a while and then they come back again once the police are gone. So, for example, in 2023, I visited Cambodia. I visited Siem Novelle with a group of researchers. So, we got some information about how some of the scam compound were closed during a police raid a year ago. But then we got more SOS messages or information from victims or survivors saying they were working in these compounds again. So we visited Sienoville and secretly visited the outside of these buildings. And from the outside, it's pretty clear that there are people in these buildings. There are people still working. You could see, let's say, the hangars with lots of personal belongings and clothes. We see people walking in and out. We see the small food truck right under these buildings. And we also see security guards guarding these buildings. So every single indicators tell us that the compound is back. These operations are back.
I want to understand how people become trafficked. The UN Human Rights Office reports that hundreds of thousands of people are trafficked from dozens of countries around the world. They work in scam operations mostly in Southeast Asia as well as far beyond. And the same report continues to describe grave human rights abuses, but also the experiences of border officials aiding scam recruiters and threats and extortion by police. But how does it start?
How are they being trafficked? A lot of the trafficking victims are being recruited as workers. For example, there could be a job listing saying, we are hiring IT support in Bangkok. We provide 3,000 US dollars per month. It's not a bad salary for people from a rural area, or actually 3,000 US dollars is not a bad salary in many, many, many countries. And if in the job listing, the HR also states that we are able to support visa, we are able to support passport application, we will reimburse all of the traveling expenses, or even they're sending money to the victim for them to apply for the visa, passports, and coming over to Bangkok, let's say. Many young people could fall into this trap, accept the job offer, and make their way to Southeast Asian countries and ended up in the scam compound, even not in Thailand.
A person who's trafficked ends up in a scam compound and begins scamming other victims. I try to imagine how a person with no background in fraud becomes a scammer, because these schemes are often remarkably sophisticated. It involves technical skills, emotional manipulation, and they probably spend long hours with their victims, right?
I would say there are two different routes. The first would be skills. They need the skills, actual skills, to be a scammer. And another side is the psychological effect and of the coercion that they're experiencing to make them either convinced to be a scammer or make sure that they're behaving, they're not escaping. So for the skills, In these scam compounds, in each office or department, there will be a team leader, a scam manager, or let's say HR leader, human resource leader who is in charge of supporting these newly on board scammers to learn. So there will be script provided saying, if let's say if you met a woman on Tinder and this woman just got divorced, what is the kind of psychological support you could give her if you follow the script, building a friendship and then a romantic relationship online with this woman. And once this person started to trust you, what's next? What kind of terms you should be using, what kind of sentences or pictures you should send her to make sure that she's willing to follow your guide into having an account on a crypto platform and start being scammed by us, etc., etc. And on the other side, there were a lot of coercion and manipulation happening in the compound. And a lot of them mentioned that at some point they were convinced that listening, behaving, obeying to their scam manager is the only way for them to survive. Because they witness physical violence, they witness people who are trying to escape being beaten. If they're not meeting their target, their water, their food may be removed. They have experienced a lot of mental manipulation during their stay in the scam compound. And they may be convinced that let's just behave, let's stay. Some criminals may promise them that there's a contract between us. After you complete the 1 year work, we'll let you go. And a lot of the victims would tend to believe that and decide to stay, decide to behave until the contract is over and expecting to leave and escape after the contract is over to avoid any personal danger.
These people who are trafficked are spending hours and hours scamming other victims, and they leave trails of devastation behind, even if it is unattended. Can you explain how trafficked victims emotionally recover after such an experience? And can they actually recover?
A lot of time they really don't have that capacity or time to think about or to really feel what's happening around them and to have any kind of sympathy towards their victim because first of all they need to meet the target, and second they know that if they don't behave or if they don't obey there's going to be punishment. So we heard that every victim would every day for let's say 12 or 14 hours they will be messaging people on different dating apps nonstop, so they could talk with let's say 100 people, potential scam victims per day. So I really doubt that they will really have that emotional connection with any of those victims because all they're doing is just copy pasting the same sentences from the scripts onto 10 different accounts, 20 different chat box, and see how many of them are replying, how many of them are falling into this trap. So it's a really stressful job and situation, I would say. And that's why we are also really advocating for mental health support for the survivors upon leaving the scam compound. After returning to their home country, they need psychological support to really recover, even though I doubt that they would ever really, really recover, but they need support to recover from these trauma.
Most people think they probably will never be scammed. They might consider themselves savvy computer users, they are aware of the tricks scammers pull, and yet reports indicate around 600 million individuals worldwide are scammed annually. Are there any prerequisites for getting scammed?
I would say everybody. And I could share with you a story that I heard from a victim. So he shared with us that apart from scamming people every day while he was trapped in the scam compound, he was also in charge, or all of the victims are also in charge of designing and coming up with new script or new ways of scamming people. So every victim, apart from reaching their scam target, they will also need to submit an assignment. It could be a script, it could be a innovative scam method, it could be anything per week. And once the scam manager collected these newly innovated scam methods, they would try out these methods on different people, on different accounts, different victims. And once they realized that one of the script or one of the methods are actually useful, they will ask the entire compound or the entire company of the victims of the scammers to continue using this method until this method or this story or this script is being revealed by, let's say, international media, people start talking about it, then they would try out another method. Let's say there are 100 victims in one company. That means 100 new methods or new script will be developed per week. So there are endless new ideas, endless new scripts, endless new tactics being used on different targets. So all we can do is just to be careful and be aware.
Even though it's inescapable, are there maybe signs that you could recognize I'm being scammed? Can you already recognize it before the scam? And let's say that you are in a scam, is it easy to step out of it?
That's definitely a great way to end a podcast, because I always like to provide some action points or next steps or recommendations to people. Because yes, scam. It's so difficult to avoid scam nowadays, but there are some ways for us to protect ourselves. So first of all, avoid anything that's too good to be true. This goes to both scam victims and trafficking victims. For example, we all know that if you want to successfully earn money from the investment market, if you want to become rich, you need to understand the market. You need to understand your investment target. You need to be knowledgeable about what you're doing. And we also know that a 50% return per year by simply making a few clicks on a mysterious online platform is nearly impossible. So anything that's too good to be true, anything that if let's say if a recruiter claiming himself as an international headhunter, saying, I have a cool opportunity for you. It's 60,000 US dollars per year. We do not need your CV for now. We do not need you to be here. All you need to do is to share your passport detail with us, and then we will deal with all of the administration for you. You'll be on board soon, etc., etc. We all know that it's difficult to find a good job nowadays. We all know that 50% return on investment is nearly impossible. So if we're being reached out to these opportunities that are too good to be true, this is the first red flag. We need to stop, think about what's happening, think about who this person is, and do our reference check. We should really Google these companies, and nowadays we see a lot of the fake companies. They have legitimate websites where they've got pages to apply to their jobs. They got pages explaining what they do. They have pictures. They have fake LinkedIn profile online. So we just need to double check everything. For example, the location, put the location or the address of the office onto Google Map to see where that is. Take a look at the company registration number. Does it really exist in that country that this person claimed that the company is operating? And if this company really exists, is it really operating? Is it only being established 2 months ago, or is this something legitimate that has been running for more than 10 years, etc.? So we just need to do our work. We need to double check everything, triple check everything before we trust anyone that are reaching out to us.
Thank you for your time today. But before I let you go, do you have 3 books that you would like to recommend to our listeners?
I have one book in mind at the moment. Okay, it's called Scam: Inside Southeast Asia's Cyber Crime Compound. So this book is real. So this book is actually written by my ex colleagues and also researchers that I highly recommend. It's by Ling Li, Mark Bull, and also Francis Chidi. So this book is a combination of case studies and analysis of firsthand experience working frontline in Cambodia. So these three researchers, they were actually personally in Cambodia, supporting on the front line. At the front line, they spoke with victims. We spoke with survivors. They support victims to leave the compound, provide financial support or shelters after they leave the compound. They were also in charge of like identifying who are actually the scammer, who are actually a trafficker among these victims, and they were also sharing all of their experience in this book and sharing what scam could look like, how to avoid being scammed, how to avoid being how do we identify a scam or a trafficking victim that are around us. So this is definitely one book that I would recommend.
Charlene, thank you so much for your time. And for our listeners, if you have any questions or recommendations, please leave a message. And I wish you all the best in your journey. Charlene, thank you so much.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for having me. And yeah, once again, thank you so much for today. And I'm so happy to share my experience and research with all of the audience.